What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today we're breaking down Connor Rogers in his first mock draft with NBC Sports, but he's done plenty of mock drafts and we've talked about some of his content in prior videos, so excited to break down this mock draft. And before we get started, I do want to note there is a sponsor for today's video. It's BetUS, so definitely go down to the description, check out the links down below. They'll match your first deposit up to 125%, which is an awesome deal, or you sign up and get a free $50 bet. So some exciting things there. I'm excited to have BetUS as a sponsor. Thank you to them. And if you guys are interested in sports gambling, haven't done it yet, or just looking for a new sports book to tip the toes into the water with, BetUS, I highly encourage them. So let's go ahead and get started by looking at pick number 1. Connor Rogers has the Carolina Panthers taking Bryce Young. This would be the pick if it was up to me. They need a future franchise quarterback, and to me, Bryce Young comes with the highest floor of anybody in this class. I understand, the durability issues that may come with, a 5'10", 185-ish pound quarterback. At least that's what he's going to play at. But his pocket feel is fantastic. He's got a good enough arm. He's super cerebral above the shoulders, great accuracy. He does a lot of those little things too as well. Checks the line of scrimmage, understanding and reading a defense, all those little things that don't always talk about when we talk about quarterbacks, but they are drastically important. And we also saw him carry one of the weaker Alabama rosters we've seen in some time. So we'd love to see the Panthers move in this direction. And then the Texans do take CJ Stroud. Look, I hear the smoke about them. Hey, if Young's off the board, they might go defensive player. I just think that would be a poor decision, right? You could move up from 12, but if you're going to draft a quarterback, go get your guy at 2. Even if Bryce Young's gone, I think CJ Stroud can be, I think he'd be a great fit in that offense with Bobby Slowick, Kyle Shanahan disciple. I actually think that'd be a great fit for him. High-level processor, high-level, accurate passer. And we saw the mobility and the ability to create against Georgia. Now that's, one game versus an entire college sample. Which one do you weigh heavier? To me, it's the entire college resume, but nevertheless, maybe this is kind of the leaping off point for CJ Stroud. And for Houston, it's like, what are you going to roll out with Davis Mills again? And I also hear that they are big on Will Levis, so I'd be really interested with that type of selection. I have Levis ranked ahead of Stroud, so I wouldn't be mad whatsoever if they went in that direction. And then the Cardinals take Tyree Wilson. Yeah, and I think I might end up doing this in my upcoming mock, not because I think it's the right pick, but you hear it enough and you do mocks with your ears, and yeah, it feels like where there's smoke, there's fire. And I can see where NFL teams like Tyree Wilson, right? 86-inch wingspan, 6'6", 280 plus pounds, freaky build. And he really doesn't even know how to use his hands yet, which is crazy considering, he started to make strides in 2021, and then of course last year in 2022, and just kind of developed both as a run defender, but we also saw more power and some more pass rush wins. And then, I could see an NFL team saying, hey, we're going to clean up his hand usage, and then this guy with all of his athletic traits is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And for the Cardinals in specific, assuming they're going to keep that 4-3 base that the Eagles have run, I think there's a world where you can have Tyree Wilson, Najee Sanders, and Cam Thomas all on the field at the same time. Also, no guarantee Thomas or Sanders is a hit, right? 2 former third-round picks from a year ago. But, you get into passing situations, move Tyree Wilson inside. He's 6'6", 280. I think he's plenty big enough, close to those arms, against guards who typically were moving inside because they have shorter arms. That feels like a mismatch, waiting to be exploited for whoever drafts Tyree Wilson. Then you just see Thomas and Sanders on the edge. So I think it could work out really from all sides. Colts then draft Anthony Richardson. I'm also hearing the stuff about them really being in on Will Levis, and that's their guy. So whether it's Richardson or Levis, I appreciate them taking quarterback. It's about time. Just like the Texans and the Panthers, even if your absolute number one guy isn't there, eventually you just got to be able to take that quarterback, and you got to be able to get this rebuild on the road, right? And for the Colts, it's like you're in a division now where, the Jags have positioned themselves to be the best team in the division. What are you going to do about it, right? So whether it's Levis, Richardson, or CJ Stroud maybe falls in their lap, they got to draft quarterback, in my opinion. And Anthony Richardson comes with this crazy upside. I'd love to see his athleticism and, what Shane Steichen would do from the OC standpoint and the play calling standpoint. Does it look a lot like Hurts and what the Eagles did last year? If so, I'd just rather see Anthony Richardson out on the field right away. Buy himself some time to grow as a passer, given his athletic ability and given his rushing ability. Plus, him and Jonathan Taylor in a backfield, man, that option game could be really deadly and, just give defensive ends nightmares. So whether it's Levis or Richardson, I love the upside play there at the quarterback selection. Seahawks then take Jalen Carter. Look, I know there's a lot of Seattle fans who are not really crazy about this. And frankly, I hear from a lot of different, fans of different, teams and whatnot that they don't want anything to do with Jalen Carter. And again, I totally understand that. But focusing solely on the player here, pairing him up with Draymond Jones, that's an insane interior pass rush duo. And I would love to know what that force multiplying effect looks like when you have two of those interior pass rushing disruptors, right? We've seen what Jeffrey Simmons can do for the Titans, Christian Wilkins for the Dolphins, Aaron Donald for the Rams. Why don't they get two of those guys? That feels like, a hard task to try to slow down there if you're an opposing offense. And then maybe that generates even more production out of a Boye Mafe, a Darrell Taylor, and Uchenna Nwosu. So could definitely go edge here, Will Anderson. I'd almost prefer to see these picks flipped just because I think Jalen Carter is a great fit in Detroit. But either way you spin it, if Seattle and Detroit, two teams that Seattle made the playoffs, the Lions just missed, end up with the two best non-quarterbacks in this class, how could you not consider that a win? I know Carter comes with the off-the-field stuff, but that's still a huge addition to that defense and makes an impact in the run game. And then talking more about Detroit, Will Anderson. Again, I wish these picks were flipped, but Will Anderson partnered up with Aiden Hutchinson. Whew, that is some serious juice there on the edge. And then James Houston, who was a great story last year, becomes this DPR third down rusher. This is a team that's going to put up a lot of points. So that third pass rush, role is not a small one here for Detroit. So I kind of love it. And honestly, we get so focused with drafting need here where it's like, a corner, but they just moved on from Okudah. They have to go corner here. It's like, you know what? You got to draft for the best interest of your franchise. You got to go best player available here. And Will Anderson, in some people's boards, is the number one player. Some people have him as the best non-quarterback. And to me, he is a razor-thin margin just behind Jalen Carter for the second best non-quarterback in this class. Anderson's number 2, Carter's number 1. But again, it's separated by razor blades. So, this would be a huge addition to that defense. And it's just the smart move for Brad Holmes to make here. Despite, a corner here would be awesome. And we're going to have consecutive corners come off the board. Raiders, Devin Witherspoon, that's a fantastic fit, and it helps them in their secondary right away. I think Witherspoon comes with the most NFL immediate impact, as well as the highest floor of any of these corners. Scheme versatile, such a twitchy athlete, such a sudden athlete at that. And then when you see the 4.42 speed at his pro day, and it's like, all right, well, long speed's not an issue either. Really, it just comes down to he's 5'11", 180, and because he is a hard hitter, is he going to hit his way out of his career? Maybe, but all these guys are one hit away from being done. So you can't really have that being the looming factor in why you don't draft Devin Witherspoon, because if he hits, dude, especially in that secondary that's going to see the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos, you need that number one shutdown guy. Witherspoon has that upside as well as that high floor. I'd pair him up with Nate Hobbs too, former Fighting Illini. That'd be a cool story as well. And then again, going back to his scheme versatility, Patrick Graham's going to mix it up a lot, and I think Witherspoon can be up to that task. Then the Falcons, Christian Gonzalez. This is an upside play if I've seen it. I mean, let's talk about, I don't know if this mock was made before the Jeff Okudah trade. I would kind of assume that it has been. But still, Christian Gonzalez, Jeff Okudah. You're saying one of these two guys is going to win that other starting job. And then who knows, maybe Okudah moves inside to play the nickel. I know Richie Grant does some of that, but maybe he focuses then on playing solely strong safety. And worst comes to worst, Okudah looks better, Christian Gonzalez hits at pick 8, and then you already know AJ Terrell's a stud. And then you have 3 great corners. What's the problem with that? Gonzalez, just like Witherspoon, I think coverage versatility, can play press, can play off, variety of zones, play man coverage, freaky athlete, big build. You guys have heard all my takes on all these prospects. So focusing mostly here on the fit, and Atlanta, whether it's Gonzalez or Okudah who hits on the other side of Terrell, plus Jesse Bates, that secondary is starting to look really, really good in Atlanta. Pick 9, Peter Skoronski. Look, I know Connor is a big Peter Skoronski fan. I totally respect it. To me, I'm starting to kind of I think Skoronski can play tackle, but the idea of him being like a all-pro level guard pretty much right away within years 2 and 3, I think he has that potential, and maybe we even see it in year 1. I love the idea of him playing guard, and here you're drafting him to play tackle, unless you want to keep Tevin Jenkins at tackle, and I'm not really crazy to see that. So I'd rather go Paris Johnson Jr. here. To me, he's the best tackle in the class, or even a Darnell Wright. I mean, he's such a hot name right now. Plug and play right tackle. You keep Braxton Jones where he is at left tackle, and you're ready to roll. I don't know. I hate the Skoronski pick. There's just other places I'd go here, and I think better fits at tackle. Then we get the Eagles taking Lucas Van Ness. I've applauded this pick in previous Grade the Mocks. And I love it. It's a perfect Brandon Graham replacement moving on from an older guy who wins with power to then replace this guy who's a 3-year, has 3 years of college experience, most of it on the inside. So he's relatively raw when playing true edge, but has that same profile and that same knack for winning with power. That get off on the line of scrimmage is awesome, and he turns it into power. So would love to see him be that Brandon Graham replacement. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Eagles to move in that direction. Will Levis falls out of the top 10. This becomes a pretty easy decision here for the Titans. Malik Willis looked a whole lot more raw than I would have even anticipated, and I liked Malik Willis, and I knew there was work to be done, but yeah, he did not look great. And when an offense turns it over to Josh Dobbs over you, then Steelers fan, all the respect in the world for Josh Dobbs, but not a top 32 starter. So if you're turning it over from Willis to Dobbs, that's probably not a good sign. Never say never. There might be some growth that he hits this offseason or maybe in another offseason, but I'd just go ahead and rather take Will Levis. You move on from Ryan Tannehill. I think Levis can start right away. You got to clean up the footwork a little bit, but I think the decision-making will get better at the next level when he's not playing hero ball against SEC defenses, when he has one of the worst offensive lines, one of the worst pass-catching cores in the conference around him. So I think it gets better, especially when you have Derrick Henry in the backfield, Treylon Burks out wide. I still think you can add wide receiver on day 2 if you were to get Levis to fall in your lap at 11. And that's the other big win here. You get a quarterback and you don't have to move up. That's too good to pass on here. Texans then take Nolan Smith. I could totally see where this guy is the character that DeMeco Ryans is all for. I also think Lucas Van Ness would make a ton of sense here. Don't hate them going corner. They could also trade back. I think the options here for Houston at 12 are aplenty. And I talked about them maybe moving up to get quarterback. But again, my stance is if you want a quarterback, take him at 2. That's just the way I view it. But, that Lance Zierlein mock kind of put that into the world, and maybe it's a possibility. I just assume stick and pick, take the best defensive player here, or Jackson Smith-Njigba maybe. Quentin Johnston wouldn't hate that either. But here, Nolan Smith, high character. I think, again, great fit for DeMeco Ryans, and this team needs edge rusher like yesterday. So trying to get a guy who, didn't have all the best opportunities to rush the passer straight up, so maybe there's some untapped potential there. He's a freaky athlete and already stops the run at a high level, and I think he can add 8 to 10 pounds worth of pure muscle, and it's not like he's going from 4.39 to 4.59 or anything like that. I think he can bulk up and still be low 4.4 speed. So a lot of potential to tap into with Nolan Smith. Jets get Paris Johnson Jr. This would be an awesome win. Whether they're keeping Mekhi Becton, whether they're keeping Dwayne Brown, whether they want to start Max Mitchell, I don't care. That can play out on its own, and we'll see who earns that job, and we'll see how healthy Mekhi Becton can stay. But Paris Johnson Jr., to me, gives me at least one of those guys, one of those tackle spots is solidified. We'll figure out the right tackle position, Mitchell, Brown, or Becton. But Paris Johnson Jr., I think, is a great fit in that zone blocking scheme, and at least gives you one solid answer. And that being said, did play right guard a couple years ago at Ohio State. So maybe he could flip over to right tackle, and you're keeping Dwayne Brown, Mekhi Becton over at left tackle. So I'm not in the building. I don't know their long-term plans, but tackle here at 13 makes a ton of sense. We've seen a ton of mocks where this does play out. And I think that's why the Jets wanted to hold on to pick 13 as this ongoing Rodgers negotiations continues. Patriots draft Darnell Wright. This would also, I think, be a great fit. You'd have to keep Trent Brown at left tackle, which is a little less than ideal. And then Riley Reif, not making a whole lot of money. I think he's fine as a swing tackle, especially considering he's coming off injury. It might be easier for him to kind of ramp up his workload and get closer to 100%. And once he's there, hopefully there's no injuries, but as long as you get a couple weeks in the season, should be back to a full 100%. Darnell Wright, like I said earlier, a hot name right now. Probably has the best anchor of anybody in this class, but also has underrated movement skills. 6'6", 310 plus pounds. And yeah, there's not much you can nitpick in his game. The only reason he's not higher on my offensive tackle rankings is I wonder how much that Josh Heupel offense keeps him clean. Also a little bit of an older prospect, but that being said, 2 years of playing left tackle, 2 years of playing right tackle. Maybe I'm underrating the switch here to left tackle in Darnell Wright's game, but to me, he looks like a right tackle. I think he'll stick there, and then the Patriots will just have to deal with Trent Brown for one more year at left tackle. But this selection solidifies at least one of those two starting tackle spots long term. And then we get the Packers taking Jackson Smith-Njigba. I did this in my last mock, and I even said it then. I don't know how likely it is, but the fit is undeniable. This would be a huge addition. I think JSN could be their number one guy. And then Christian Watson gets that much better as the 2. Dobbs gets that much better as the 3. And then this is a deep tight end class. Add someone on day 2 or even day 3 and get a good athlete in there. And this would be, I've talked about how this could be a great time for Gutekunst to make a draft pick out of spite against Rodgers. But also just think about Jordan Love. I'm excited to see Jordan Love, and I liked him coming out of Utah State. I've always been biased towards these traitsy players, specifically at the quarterback position. And we've seen kind of year-over-year progress from Love in small sample sizes. But just think about your quarterback. As much as I'm excited to see Jordan Love, he's not Aaron Rodgers. So he needs more weapons around him. So maybe that's enough of a validating point to where it's like, all right, we got to change our MO here. We got to get some extra firepower. Oh, JSN fell into our lap at 15. Let's sprint the card in. Commanders take Joey Porter Jr. Yeah, I think the Washington defense could use that long-term number one guy. And by adding Joey Porter Jr., I kind of hope we would see something where, Danny Johnson, I guess is fine, but really not all that great. Let's move Kendall Fuller back inside of the slot. He's had some good years playing there. And let's see what Benjamin St-Juste can do on the outside, paired up with Joey Porter Jr. You're getting a high-end athlete, long arms, and I think a really good scheme fit. There might be a little bit of question marks how he fits into cover 3 because everyone's talking about what he could be as a man press guy and then cover 2, 4, 6 off of that. But yeah, I think with his size, I'm more than comfortable with him backpedaling and playing a lane, essentially. The only thing that I might have a concern with is his change of direction skills and the ability to plant the back foot and go make a play on a wide receiver, go get the ball, that type of explosiveness, that type of suddenness you see with some other corners that can just plant that back foot and go make a play on the ball or a wide receiver or whatever. That might be a weak spot in Porter's game, but I think there's a lot of other tools still to be worked with there, and I think he's a good fit in Washington. Then the Steelers take Broderick Jones, so they get a little bit of a fortuitous play of the board here, and Jones falls just enough. And would give Pittsburgh, that left tackle upgrade that I desperately think that they need, and would be over the moon if they got. Jones pretty raw as a pass protector. He drops his head. His hand placement's really wide. So there's things that need to be fixed, but that being said, those are two pretty, correctable, issues in someone's game. And they kind of are the tendency of someone who's got 1 year worth of, starting time on a full-time basis. He had some spot starts in 2021. But, raw guy, but I think can be coached up. And I think he is the tackle that Pittsburgh would want. Comparing him to an Anton Harrison, I have, Harrison 3, Broderick Jones 4, but I think Pittsburgh's looking for a mauler. And Broderick Jones not only has the size, but he has the strength, but also pretty good movement skills, and I think he's better moving as a blocker on the move versus just sitting in a phone booth. And part of that again, he's raw as a pass protector, so that's probably why I feel that way. But yeah, upside play here for Pittsburgh, and then Quinn McCorfor's kind of improved year over year. And you look at the Steelers' offensive line; those two tackles are the weakest spots in my opinion. So finding an upgrade at either one would be big. And then the Lions take Dalton Kincaid. Yeah, I know Detroit fans aren't going to love this, and I just don't know how much Ben Johnson needs it in his offense. That being said, they have enough assets in the top 100 that I'd still like to see a tight end pick, just because if you already have a good offense, and even if you don't utilize it, just getting better at the position, the rich get richer. What's wrong with that? At least for mock draft sake. But yeah, Kincaid, awesome athlete, would give you more in that standpoint than what you have with Hawkinson, who is more your prototypical good route runner. Find the soft spot in the zone, sure-handed, solid after the catch, but nothing great. Kincaid has the highest receiving ceiling of any tight end this year. Really fluid after the catch, good route runner, and hard to bring down too. And I think there's some upside with him as a blocker that he hasn't really shown yet. I would prefer him in a zone blocking scheme, but nevertheless, this is definitely a better receiving option than Brock Wright. Do I think Detroit goes elsewhere? Ultimately, yes, I do think they go elsewhere on round 1. But Kincaid is a fun idea to think about in that offense. Buccaneers then take Myles Murphy. Yeah, twitched up athletes, good frame. And it's kind of similar to what they did with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka a couple years ago, where it transformed his body, but we didn't see him in 2020 because of the COVID season. So a little bit of an upside play, a little bit of a work in progress type of pick. And Myles Murphy, man, he can play with power and he's good against the run. It's just you got to coach up the moveset, and then he's got to learn how to play that one-on-one chess game with the tackle. But that could come with time. And also, if Shaq Barrett is fine, post injury, that gives Murphy the time to kind of figure it out, and maybe he just plays on early downs, right, and run situations. But also you got to think about the future, right? Like Shaq Barrett can't play forever. So I also like this for Myles Murphy to be projected as that long-term starter opposite of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. And again, those are two twitched up athletes. So that'd be a really fun edge duo long-term. The Seahawks then take Zay Flowers. I mean, this is just like D. Eskridge, but better. That's the simplest way I could put it. A lot of yak upside, but also has the ability to be a deep weapon, and also kind of serves as a nice replacement for Tyler Lockett in a year or two, whenever it ends up being. I think he has a lot of those similar skill sets, and I know people have floated out that comp before, but long speed is there, deep route running ability, and also Tyler Lockett, despite his size, is one of the best players I've ever seen in my life at tracking football. He makes some of the most improbable catches I've ever seen. He does it at like 5'10", 170, or whatever his official weight is. And it's mind-boggling. And Zay Flowers has a little bit of that in him. So I actually kind of like this destination. You play him in the slot early, and then he becomes that Tyler Lockett replacement in a couple years' time. Chargers, Jordan Addison. I've been singing the praises of this fit. It was in my best offensive fits for all 32 teams video. If you missed it, definitely go back, check it out. Love the inside-out versatility. I think you play him on the outside year one. Try to take advantage of the long speed and the deep route running that he brings. And then, in a year's time, he replaces Keenan Allen. So I think the fit just kind of explains itself. But sharp route runner. The only thing that I'd be a little concerned with in this wide receiver room is, who's that yak guy? Because, Keenan Allen's fine with the ball in his hands, but he's getting up there in age and kind of losing the step. Mike Williams, that's not his game. Josh Palmer, I don't really think that's his game either. But that being said, you have Austin Eckler, and I think you can make do with who you have. Really, this team needs to add speed, and I think Addison, 4.49 40, I don't think really fully tells a story, honestly, if I were to guess. And if his back were healthy, I'd say closer to 4.45, which is still faster than the guys they already have on roster. Ravens take Deonte Banks. This is a perfect scheme fit. Pair him up with Marlon Humphrey. I am absolutely here for it. And now that they've added Odell Beckham Jr., I think they can prioritize corner, because look at our lads. It's rough there on the outside of Marlon Humphrey. IDL also in play. And, in my next mock, I'm still thinking I might go wide receiver here, because once you tell me an offense features OBJ, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, plus, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, whoever it ends up being, that's an offense I'm scared of. Plus Lamar Jackson's rushing ability. Plus J.K. Dobbins in the backfield. That's when it's like, okay, how do you game plan? How do you slow that unit down? So still love wide receiver here, but I think Baltimore is going to view it as, we signed Nelson Aguilar and OBJ. No, that's as much investment we've ever done, so we're done. So I could totally see corner IDL there at 22, or trade down. I could see them trading down, no second round pick. Team maybe trying to move back in the first round to get Hendon Hooker or something like that. Makes a lot of sense. Vikings take Kalijah Kancey. I don't know if I've seen this mocked actually, but it makes a lot of sense. I think I've pondered with Brian Brzee. Minnesota's a team that could really use some interior offensive line, or interior defensive line rather, upgrade. Kyrus Tonga was a player I liked, but he did fall to the 6th round. And as much as I liked him as a prospect, once you get drafted in the 6th round, you're forever known as a 6th rounder. I wonder why that is. Doesn't mean he can't, take a step forward, but didn't really get to see a whole lot of him in Chicago. So can't say that I would, hold my breath expecting him to have a breakout season this year in Minnesota. Also, Dean Lowry getting older, also not that great anymore. Never really was that special of a player, and certainly not now. So Kancey, I would assume, is playing that Dean Lowry role versus, the nose spot where Tonga's going to be at. But that type of firepower at the line of scrimmage, when you still have, Marcus Davenport, Daniil Hunter, finding that third pass rusher could really make that defensive line a lot more scary in Minnesota. So it's not a fit in a selection that I've thought of yet, but I do think this is some solid value for Kancey. Really, I think pick 10 to Philadelphia is enticing. And then once you get into the back half of the teens and the 20s, it's like, all right, Kalijah Kancey anywhere here is some solid value. And then we get the Jags taking Brian Branch. I will spare everyone how much I love this, because I've waxed poetic about this fit so many times. But I think it makes that corner trio of Campbell, Darius Williams, and Brian Branch a really solid unit. Branch can also be used as safety, kind of fills 2 holes at once, sure tackler, and it's just kind of the player the Jags need in that secondary. So yeah, again, the fit is perfect. Giants take Quentin Johnston, same thing I had in my last week's mock. I know Rodgers is a little bit lower on Quentin Johnston, and that kind of bears out here in this mock. He's my wide receiver 1, pretty much based on upside alone, because there's still, and especially after his pro day, there's some concerns I have with him in his game. And Daniel Jones is a quarterback that targets the middle field a lot. So I wonder, not only screen game, but could you just utilize Quentin Johnston just like nonstop running drags, and just kind of hope that his athleticism creates some big plays out of that? I do wonder. I think that could be an easy way to generate some offense for Daniel Jones. Then, of course, the screen game is there as well. And then, of course, you got to talk about he's 6'3", 208, and, I know 4.51 pro day 40. That's a little concerning. I don't know what the difference between combine and pro day. Why would that number get worse at the pro day? That's a little bit of a head scratcher there. But nonetheless, I still think the speed plays. You see it on tape. Maybe he's schemed open sometimes at TCU, but I also see him leave guys in the dust all the time on goes and posts. So my main thing with Quentin Johnston is I know he can run that vertical stuff, and he's fine on a drag route, and then just let his yards after the catch ability take over. Can he add that comeback route, and can he add a slant? Can he just basically run DK Metcalf's route tree? If so, I think this is really good value here at 25. Cowboys, Will McDonald. I just can't see Dallas going edge. Even with, some of the names off the board that I think they would like, but Bijan's available here. I think that makes a lot of sense. Even if he was gone, Jahmyr Gibbs could be a fit. Jack Campbell, I don't hate that. Trenton Simpson. IDL Brian Brzee, I'd almost prefer over straight up edge because you got Sam Williams, you got Dorrance Armstrong, you got Micah Parsons, you got Tank Lawrence. I think it's already a pretty crowded room. So if you're going to go pass rush here, I'd prefer to see someone on the interior defensive line like a Brzee, or if Cansey was still here. Him and Osa Odighizuwa, I think, could create too much of a light front and you kind of get beat up in the run game. So Brzee is my preference there. But long tangent aside, Will McDonald is a fun player and he has underrated length too. So maybe there is a way to kind of work him into this. But considering how good of an athlete is and his first step and that explosiveness and a defense that runs a lot of stunts and twists, he is kind of fun to think about. And I don't see a guard keeping up with Will McDonald screaming across their face. So I can see where McDonald would be a good player in that defense. I just don't know if that defense needs him. Hopefully that makes sense. Bill Seiko, Osiris Torrance. Yeah, he may not be the perfect scheme fit, but I don't, if Osiris Torrance isn't because he doesn't have great movement skills, then what was Roger Saffold doing there, And granted, Osiris Torrance played right guard at Florida. Saffold, you'd be replacing the left side of the offensive line, so you'd have to ask him to do a flip there. But I think you can get better than Ryan Bates. They did sign Connor McGovern, so for the next year, if you're telling me the interior offensive line is Torrance, McGovern, and Bates, all right, I think that's solid. Or rather, really, it's going to be Torrance, Mitch Morse, and McGovern, and that I think is actually a pretty solid unit. And then if Mitch Morse does become someone who is off the roster in a year or two's time, McGovern can shift over to center, and then you readdress this position later on. So considering it's already a need, and it may only become a further need, if Osiris Torrance is there at 27, him or Steve Avila, they can make a lot of sense for Buffalo. Bengals take Bijan Robinson. Yep, this would be a really good Joe Mixon replacement. I wonder what you would do with the cap space. If you're going to move on from Mixon, the cap space would have been more utilized earlier on in free agency versus now. But also it could roll over and come into handy when you're talking about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, all their extensions and whatnot. So wherever you save the money, whether it's now or later, that's totally fine. And I think a lot of what Joe Mixon's game, predicated on coming out of Oklahoma, Bijan Robinson brings you that, but maybe even better. Not even maybe. Just does it better from a prospect standpoint. And I know Mixon, even coming out of college, he probably would have gone earlier than what he did if not for some of the off-the-field stuff that was around him at the time. But I think you're still keeping someone who's a high-level receiver. If anything, I think you're adding a little bit more explosiveness. And I think he can be the lead back in that committee and then I know you lose Samaje Perine too, but Bijan and Chris Evans, I think those two guys can hold down the fort. Saints take Brian Brzee. This is one we see plenty in mocks. And I think this is good range for Brzee, somewhere in that. This is a wide range, 20 to 40. If you really want to narrow it down, maybe 25 to 35, I think it's a good spot for him to go. Definitely a lot of upside to mine into. Has the size, the athleticism, checks a lot of those boxes. And for New Orleans, I just don't think Saunders is the answer there on the inside. And then after Colin Saunders, it's like, who else is really even there? So big time problem spot when you look at the Saints roster. Need that run stopper to replace David Onyemata, and I think Brzee brings that run stopping ability right away while also having a lot of upside from the pass rush standpoint. Eagles take Steve Avila. Guard center flexibility here makes this kind of interesting. I would assume he would be drafted, and then you would move him to right guard, but then what happens with Cam Jurgens? So, not necessarily the best fit long term, but the Eagles are going to continue to address defensive line, offensive line. Makes a lot of sense. And maybe this is also Connor Rogers saying Steve Avila deserves to be looked at as, as a late first round type of guy. You don't always see it in mocks. So I appreciate it from that standpoint. This would have been a little bit better if it was Osiris Torrance. And then this also kind of circling back to the Eagles' first pick at 10. Do you just take Peter Skoronski if he's there? He wasn't in this mock, but if he is, play him at right guard, shift him over to play right tackle to be a Lane Johnson replacement. That's something you're not getting out of Steve Avila here. So I think there's some other routes you could take, but given how the board played out and what they did at 10, I don't hate Avila by any stretch. And then the Chiefs take Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Whether it's Will McDonald lasting here, FAU, or BJ Ojulari, if the Chiefs take one of those three edge rushers, I am all in for it. Or Aditamiwa Adibare could be fun. Mozzie Smith may be something you see on the channel here pretty soon. So, yeah, add a speedy bendy edge rusher when you already have Charles Omenihu and George Karlaftis that can work the early down stuff. I think FAU is probably a liability in the run game, early on in his career. Same thing I said with BJ Ojulari in last week's mock. But Kansas City is going to be leading a lot of games. That third pass rush role is not a small one in that defense. So, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, BJ Ojulari, whoever it ends up being, even if they're not good against the run, they'll see enough snaps as a pass rusher and serve a big role in that Kansas City defense. So that'll do it for my reaction to Connor Rogers in his first mock with NBC Sports. This was pretty solid. And I mean, a lot of the names that he mentioned in today's video, I think, warrant first round consideration. So I'm going to give Rogers a 93. Yeah, I think this was really solid. And also some points to talk about, like Tyree Wilson going 3. So let me know what you guys would grade this mock down below in the comment section, whether it's A, B, C, D, or F, or you want to go 0 to 100 like I did. However you want to grade it, let me hear it down below in the comment section. And also, who's your favorite team, and did you like the pick that Rogers gave your squad? Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Be sure to hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new, looking for more football content in your life. And again, definitely check out the sponsor links down below in the description. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am